the people of sake actually brought me into sake.
Back in 1988, this place was actually in Ginza on the main drag.
At first it was kind of soy sauce, it was miso.
To the point where it actually changed my life.
New Year's Day 1989.
Not just sake as a beverage, but all the culture and history.
Welcome. You are tuning in to episode number 34 of Sake on Air, the world's one and only, as well as the very first podcast dedicated to all things sake and shochu. My name is Justin Potts, and I am one of several of your regular hosts here on the show. And this week, as always, we are recording and broadcasting from the Japan Sake and Shochu Information Center located in the heart of Tokyo. This week, we're continuing with our Know Your Hosts series, where we bring on your hosts to talk about, well, themselves. With a good bit of regularity, we actually get quite a few requests from listeners saying that they would like to know more about the people that are hosting the show. And so we thought we would oblige. So this is going to be the third of these Know Your Hosts sessions. If you'd like to track back a bit, there are 2 past episodes where we've interviewed now a total of 4 of our regular hosts. And we've got a couple more to go. This week, the first half of the episode, we will hear from Marie Nagata. Marie is interviewed by Mr. John Gauntner. And following her interview, we will have a few words from, well, none other than, well, myself, actually. You'll hear from myself, Justin Potts, and I am interviewed by Sebastian Lemoine. If while you're listening to, or after you're done listening to the show, you would be able to take even just a couple of minutes to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform it is you're streaming or enjoying Sake on Air on, it would really, really be a great help to all of us here at the show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Sake on Air. Today, I'll be interviewing Marie Nagata and see what has occurred in her life to lead her down the sake path, what she has in her background and past, and where she tends to go from here. So, hi, Marie. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, John. You've been traveling around the world.
I travel a bit too much these days, and it'll probably all settle down in about 40 years. So I've got that to look forward to.
So here we are.
Here we are indeed. And we might as well just jump right in. So we first met when you took my sake professional course. And then we met again when you took the second level. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what got the sake ball rolling for you.
You did.
So
indeed.
what led you to do that? And if you don't mind, why don't we start by you giving me the concise version of how you got where you are?
Right. So I often get asked, questions like, so how did you get started in the world of sake? And my one-word answer to that, or a one-sentence answer to that would be, it was all because of a French woman. It's always because of a French woman somewhere. So my friend and former coworker, Anna Tiak, who was also an alumnus of your course, she and I used to work together here in Tokyo. She was a wine professional here who had taken your course because she had so much passion about learning all things Japanese and all things sake. And up until that point, I didn't really have a good impression of sake altogether. Not to say I had any idea about what it is, but it's just during my college years leading up into my early 20s, I always thought it was like this harsh drink, higher proof, like always associated older guys drinking on the curbside.
Seems to be a typical assumption throughout Japan these days.
I guess so.
And around the world, actually.
And unfortunately, that seems to be the case. And, I'm guilty as charged, I guess. I used to be one of those people. Not to mention, it includes doing sake bombs back in my college days in the US. But so when she said, Marie, you should really get into the world of sake, I think you'll like it, I didn't really take her words seriously. But she did also allude that there were some fairly good-looking guys who also took the course, who were quite highly cultured. So I was like, that could be an investment.
Starts with a French woman and leads to back to men.
I guess so. So that's kind of how I got interested in your course at first, and also relating back to Anna, I guess she stayed with me for a couple days before she left the country, and when she left a bottle of sake behind. That happened to be, I still remember to this day, a label called Namaiki from Mikotsuru Brewery, who had unfortunately gone under between then and now, and who have recently come back alive and kicking, I guess. I'm not sure if they still make this very same brew, but this one particular, very, I guess, friendly and cheerful Nama just totally changed my idea of what sake is and can be.
Nama can do that for people.
I
Nama
guess
tends to
so.
really be appealing to a lot of people for sure. So.
And I paired it with a pasta dish that night, a uni-based cream sauce pasta.
Did you just make something and find out they went well together? Did you actually taste it and think about it?
No, I had no idea whatsoever. And this particular uni pasta actually was a frozen microwave pasta. So even with something very casual, this particular nama went just blissfully together.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that was a big turn.
That was a very big turnaround for me. Yeah.
I find that sake is probably the most food-friendly beverage on the planet. You can do precise pairings if you want to, but the most important thing is almost never do have a train crash. It's never going to be bad. It looks like you hit that note on that night. That's
absolutely
cool to hear. That's cool to hear. After you took the first level course, you waited about a year, correct, to take the second one?
Yes, I did.
Were you involved in any sake-related work in that one-year period?
Not apart from excessive drinking.
That's not work. It's a very valid and important activity if you're learning about sake, but it's not work. So you actually didn't take that leap into a sake career.
No, not
right
at
away,
all.
correct?
I was still working in the corporate life here in Tokyo, having to do nothing at all with sake for the next year, perhaps a year and a half or so. And in that time, I'd taken your level 2 course.
And what led you to level 2? Just needed to know more? Just needed to experience more?
I guess my fellow classmates from level 1.
They encouraged you to do that, huh?
Peer pressure. No, but I had, we built such amazing friendship throughout the first group of classmates from level 1, and they were just amazing, fun people to hang out with. Some of my bestest memories involving sake, or sharing maybe a couple of bottles of sake with them.
That always helps.
It sure does. And I found out that quite many of them were coming back immediately the year after for year level 2. So I figured, I was going to continue learning about sake, so why not just jump right in?
Excellent. And it was there then at level 2 that you re-met, I believe, one Mr. David Joel, the owner and master brewer of Zancudo Sake in New Zealand. Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Dave is a great guy. He and I met for the first time taking your level 1 course. And he is a very ambitious sake brewer based in Queenstown in New Zealand. And between level 1 and level 2 in that year, Dave himself had grown, I guess, as a brewer incredibly, going from brewing, maybe 2, 3, 5-liter tanks in his garage to actually a commercially sized operation, one-man operation nonetheless. But I was able to taste his sake the first time around and the second time around, and just to see how much he's come was just sensational. And at that point, it so happened that this corporate life in Tokyo was really getting to me. I was, the same old story of working around the clock, client phone calls at 11 at night, at 6 in the morning, what have you. And I was starting to question the value that I was bringing to the world through what I was doing, namely marketing and advertisement. So I figured I could probably take an adult gap year, have some time to rethink and reorganize my life. And what better way than to actually get, hands-on experience brewing sake.
Wow. Very, very bold decision. Having said that, I think a lot of people on the sake path have found themselves in that position one time or another. It's like, I can't continue with the work I'm doing, and I've got this interest here, so I might as well pursue that. So
sake does that to you, huh?
It certainly does. It certainly does. That's cool. And how long did you work over there?
I was there for 1 year.
And did you do any actual brewing, or did you help around with other things?
I did brewing every month, actually. At that time, it was mostly Dave and I, and another guy that would come in and help, who were doing the production work. So we did everything from, lugging around bags of rice, to washing it, to brewing it, to filtering, to bottling, and even labeling each bottle by hand. Every bit of that was done by John, Dave and I.
Cool. Sounds like you redefined craftsmanship when you were working there. Where did you guys get your rice, by the way?
We used to import from the States, Car Roads, 60% milled, I believe.
Already milled, you imported it.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But halfway through my tenure with Zancudo, we shifted to Japanese rice, 500 mangoku, imported from Japan.
That must have been expensive. We don't need to do the math here.
So when people come to us and ask us, why does your bottle of sake go for twice as much of an average wine, in New Zealand? The simple answer is it's literally made by hand, and a lot of our stuff is sourced from outside of New Zealand.
Very interesting. So you've been working with sake now for what? 6 years or so, maybe?
Not even. I think the first year I took your course must have been 2014 or 15. And I only really delved in 2017.
That's when you started to go deep into the role, right?
Right. Elbows deep, as I would say, washing bags of rice in freezing water.
So the work you're doing during the day currently is actually not related to sake. Is that correct?
That is correct. As of 3 weeks ago, actually, I've jumped back into corporate life, I guess, here in Tokyo, working 2 jobs, a corporate job by day and still going strong with my sake business by night. And the reason behind that decision is actually somewhat related to sake, still not quite organized yet, but I realized after about a year of working in the sake industry that my interests and visions were kind of expanding outside and beyond the immediate realm of sake. One of such projects I'm working on at the moment is to invest in a low-carb bread specialty bakery. The reason behind that is I realized, after working in the sake industry and appreciating plenty of sake, that I was taking in way too much carbs than I should or would like in the form of liquid. So I figured, why not, find a way to continue enjoying sake and still be able to shave off a little bit of that carbs in the form of bread. So a friend and I are now talking about just bouncing ideas off of potentially doing a low-carb bread business. And all of those business ideas do come with a price tag. So working 2 jobs right now to kind of fund that dream.
No, that's actually very cool. Good luck in that direction.
Thank you.
Actually, if I can go off on a personal note kind of quickly, I've heard a rumor you're actually trilingual. Is that right?
Right.
How did that happen?
Where did you hear that from?
My wife.
Of course. Oh, I miss your wife. She's amazing. So much fun to talk to. Yes, I do happen to speak 3 languages, better on some days than others. I spent some part of my childhood growing up in South America, in Chile to be precise. So yeah, back then it was just, your parents would tell you they were moving to a whole new part of the world and you didn't really ask questions why.
You didn't have much of a choice, did you?
No.
Is your Spanish as strong as your Japanese and English?
Not quite. I would like to think I'm still conversational, quite practical and functional in Spanish, but my English and Japanese do quite dominate, both in the world of sake and outside.
I'm sure you'll have opportunities to use the Spanish as much as you do the Japanese and English as time passes on. Sake is moving in that direction.
Yeah, so I hear.
I didn't actually mean geographically, but that is happening too. There's a brewery in Mexico now. There's
one in Spain.
Brazil. Yeah, there's one in Spain as well. That's right. And we can probably look forward to more of those in other Spanish-speaking countries as well.
Yeah, I sure hope so, and hoping that my Spanish kind of picks itself back up before all the sake movement takes over.
I'm sure if you start using it again, it'll pop right back up. When you look at the industry today, both inside of Japan and outside of Japan, what really gets your heart racing, your blood boiling? What do you find really, really appealing or interesting about not so much sake itself, but the industry?
This may be going off tangent a little bit, but I'm really interested in finding out more and learning more about a more sustainable and holistic ways of not just brewing sake but the whole sake industry, and looking at a more integrated approach to brewing. And by that I mean, looking at brewers who now have turned to farmers who grow their own sake rice, to the whole community that comes together to assist in that harvest, and going through more organic or less invasive ways of brewing sake, all the way down to how everything gets reused and repurposed. Like, for example, how does kasu gets repurposed in this framework of farming and brewing, and the whole cyclical nature of how rice goes into sake and to people, and how people can give back to the nature. I know this is probably too big of an idea to...
Not at all. I think the industry is kind of close to that originally, and still to a certain degree. So if they can just tighten up the loose ends, then I think we'll have that integration as a bigger part of the industry. So that's actually a very good observation. Very cool. Very cool observation. So as you work with sake and as you play with sake, I'm sure you have the opportunity to taste a pretty wide range of sake types that are out there. We don't have to get into brands or anything like that, but what type of sake appeals to you? You can speak of grades, or you can speak of flavor profiles and aromatic profiles, whatever floats your boat. But what do you like in a sake?
All right, well, this is a tough one. I like a lot of sake, but if I were to pick one type or like one character of sake, I would revert back to a junmai. I think there's something very hearty and very simple, but in a very pleasant way about junmai sake.
So there's a whole lot of styles of junmai out there, right? There's rich, there's light, there's fruity. I would think that a typical or quintessential junmai would be somewhat ricey, slightly high acidity, fairly clear, maybe a little bit viscous, good breadth behind it. And now I'm putting all these words in your mind that I shouldn't be doing. But is that what you're referring to? Is there another type of junmai, or is it the concept of junmai?
It's partly the concept of junmai. I think, while Aruten Sake does amazing things in lightening the flavor profiles and really extracting out the aromas, perfectly a great method for, say, for example, competition sake. I personally enjoy something a bit more demure, I guess. And that kind of, and I think a lot of junmai sake, and that, junmai that's not necessarily a daiginjo grade sake has that hearty appeal. And that kind of leads into what kind of flavor profiles I appreciate most. And when it comes to sake, like you alluded to earlier, John, I really appreciate that versatility and that pairability, if that's even a word.
It is now.
It is now. Pairability of sake, something that doesn't get in the way of your enjoyment, whether that be like, overpowering the food or being too dominant and less sessionable, and that kind of low profile, but it's got that classic appeal.
Good. I know that you visited a number of sake breweries, both the one in New Zealand and a bunch of them here in Japan. When you look at the process from beginning to end, is there one particular step that stands out as most impressive to you or more impressive than the others?
There are a number of fascinating steps and stages in the process of sake brewing, but I think the one thing that still kind of I get butterflies in my stomach for is really being like observing through the process of the fermentation of moromi. because once you spend enough time with a batch, you realize that the moromi really changes in character from day one of your shikomi until the day of pressing. And, it's also a very delicate phase as well, especially towards the beginning of the fermentation process. So it's really like, for me, it's almost like looking after a small child. Like one little thing can derail the course of this this new emerging life, and
That's pretty deep.
it is deep. So yeah, like throughout the moromi process, I find myself like talking to the moromi, just kind of thinking about it from morning to night, because you're always wondering, oh, did I set the temperature right? Does it have enough blankets around it? Did I stir it too much? Not enough. And it's a very transformational process. So there's no two shikomi, or there's no two brewing process that's the same.
Great observation. Have you ever considered brewing sake here in Japan?
Ooh, I guess it's now that you've asked it, I don't know. And
I hope I haven't sent you off in yet another direction.
I mean, it's not that I'm not interested in going back into production. I enjoyed very much being on kind of behind the scenes, being the one brewing sake. But do I have the guts and what it takes to do it here in Japan? I mean, there's already hundreds of guys and girls out there who are doing stellar job.
It also takes a lot of stamina.
That it does.
Mental and physical. So I don't know. That's where I draw. That's why I know I wouldn't be suited to it. But I don't know. A lot of concentration, a lot of stamina.
And a lot of patience as well.
Yeah, it's strike 3 for me right there.
A lot of times I found myself like washing, for example, like, a bucket that's only ever contained water, but you're still washing it with water so that you can use it again to pour water in it. So that kind of, it's monotonous, but it's important little steps that you can't forgo in the daily operation of brewing sake. So yeah, you need both kind of physical and emotional, mental stamina as well to be a good brewer.
All right, last technical question. This popped into my mind as I was listening to you. Based on your experience of having brewed, which of the steps in your mind or in your brewing process where you were working seemed to exert the most leverage on the nature of the final sake?
That's a tough question to answer, actually. A number of different elements can influence the outcome of a certain sake. But based exclusively on my experience working with Dave Joel at Zancudo, I would say the pressing method. At Zancudo, we offered several different labels of sake, several different types of sake, but they all came from the same batch. But a lot of times
in other words, you would press one single batch in more than one way?
Mm-hmm,
part
that's
of it
correct.
with a machine, part of it with a drip, part of it with a box, things like that?
No part of it with a machine, actually.
Oh, wow.
So we do shizuku shibori, drip pressed, which puts moromi into these cotton bags, kind of like cheesecloth bags, and just lets the sake free flow. So only using gravity as source of extraction of sake or separation of sake from the moromi, and that generally tends to yield more elegant and aromatic sake. And the next step we would do is a fune shibori or funashibori, which is a weight pressed or pressure pressed.
Did you guys use a box similar to the box that they would use when doing funashibori in Japan?
Yes, except ours was made of metal.
Metal, yeah. So you would still fill bags with sake, put them into that box, that metal box, and then crank the lid in like they would here, correct?
We would still make the bags filled with sake, yes, and then we would place them in the fune, but we would put river rocks sourced from Queenstown, New Zealand, on top of the sake bags to add pressure and each river rock is carried by hand, lovingly so, by Dave and I.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. That's a great story. It's a great little personal touch to making the sake there.
Absolutely. It doesn't feel that way when you're doing it, though.
Probably
but
not. How much did each one weigh about? Or were they various sizes?
They come in various sizes, but some of the heavier ones, I guess, probably heavier than 10 kilos a piece.
Wow.
It is literally backbreaking. But yeah, like, the sake that we harvested through drip press and the sake that we got from the pressure press was very different in character, despite it all coming from the same batch, same rice and same yeast. And oftentimes when we have tasting, people are just blown away with what a contrast these two can draw. And it's not necessarily one's better than the other. It's just two very distinctive characters that we were able to bring out from the same batch.
And the only thing that really differed was the way that you separated the sake from the lees, correct? The pressing step, correct? Mm-hmm. Wow. That shows you how much leverage it has. Very cool.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing that popped in your mind when you answered it. That was a good answer.
Muscle memory, I guess.
Well, Marie, thanks very much for your time and for letting us all get to know you a little bit more of a deeper level. Before we wrap up today, one thing I'd like to ask, if you could suggest one thing that people out there could do to become more familiar with sake, to learn more about sake, the things that they can do at home to improve their sake experience, what would you recommend?
I would say to not be afraid of trying something new. And I mean that in a way, if you see a new label at your local sake store that you haven't tried, or perhaps a new terminology on the label that you're not too familiar with, don't get out of your head and try it and see it, and if you like it. I think this is something that's happened to me as well, but once you start learning a bit more about sake and you have a bit more technical understanding, all these terminologies and grades and words and certain types, are supposedly better than others, all of those noise gets in your head. And I think it's really important to kind of get past that and break away and to not be afraid to try something new. And whether that means, once something piques your interest, you actually shoot the brewer an email, or purposefully try something that you haven't tried from a liquor store. Like I think there is a lot of potential for growth in trying something that you haven't tried yet.
That's excellent. I think that's absolutely excellent advice that people could start to apply no matter where they are or what level they find themselves. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you for your time. It's actually quite an honor to be sitting here on the show with you, John. I mean, you were not so long ago my sensei. And when I first came and knocked on your door, I knew literally nothing about sake. So thank you for your time.
Very much my pleasure. Hope you enjoyed that. And we look forward to hearing you again on an upcoming episode of Sake on Air.
So, warm welcome to a new episode of Sake on Air, the first English language podcast about sake and shochu. As most often, we are recording from the Sake and Shochu Makers Association's offices near Toranomon, downtown Tokyo. And I'm Sébastien Lemoine, one of your regular hosts on this program. Today's episode is one of these specials where we introduce members of the team. And that topic was in high demand amongst our listeners. And I am, taking that opportunity to thank all of you for your comments, your feedback, and your suggestions. And please, we encourage you to do more and post more. And with me behind the other microphone, we have no other than
Justin Potts.
Justin, always a great pleasure to see you.
Always.
So no Sake on Air episode without sake.
This is true.
Or shochu, of course. And so I had absolutely no hesitation about the sake I should bring for our session today. And I brought this great bottle, heavy one, 1.8 liters. And could you tell us a little bit about it? But I think more importantly, your relation to it.
Yeah. So I've actually tried to go out of my way not to mention my relationship here, but I spent a number of years as what they would call a kurabito, or a sake brewer, at a place called Kiruizumi out in Chiba, based out in Chiba, which is actually where I live. And I live just about 10 minutes or so from the brewery now. So even though I'm actually not brewing with them regularly now, I still pop in there on a regular basis to help out when they need an extra hand, or with events or guiding clients or things of that nature. So while I'm not an employee of them in any way, shape, or form, I am deeply involved, I guess you could say. That being said, all of my work takes me to all over Japan. I work with a lot of different brewers in regions in a lot of different facets and different capacities. But this is a place where when it gets to really getting my hands dirty and really getting into brewing, this is where my roots lie. And so, yeah, I have a very strong affinity for Kiruizumi sake and this little bottle of AFS, AFS, that we're sipping on right now. So anything I say in relation to the brewery or its sake is completely biased. So you can go ahead and anything I say, you can go ahead and take with a grain of salt, because it is heavily biased and influenced by a great deal of personal feelings and motivations. So
I mean, yeah, beyond sake and your profile, the profile that you entered into the Sake On Air website, talks about encounters with Japan's foods producers and artisans, and that resulted into a major change or shift in your life mission. So can you tell us a little bit more about this, about your arrival in Japan?
So I've been in Japan for probably roughly 15 years or so, give or take, a little bit of back and forth in between. The first 5 or 6 years, I worked in a lot of different capacities, from PR marketing to media localization and publishing to education, feeling it out and just constantly pursuing things that I just found generally interesting. Through a series of unexpected events, I ended up working for a company called Umari, UMARI, and a great deal of the work in that company, especially when I joined in particular, was with working with, not sake specifically, but with a lot of regional development around Japan, a lot of it surrounding food, agriculture, craftsmanship, the lifestyle, the human assets that are thriving in the countryside that don't necessarily have the skills, know-how, access to the larger population, either in Tokyo or internationally. And so to try and come up with different models, products, systems, schemes through which to help to connect them to potential customers who would find value in what it is they're creating. So as opposed to necessarily having to build everything from the ground up or teach them something entirely new, how do you take their pre-existing products or place and sort of redefine that on terms that are that resonate with a population someplace? And so a lot of my work was
branding
is one, that
word.
definitely falls into that category as well, for sure. It's a bit of branding, it's a bit of marketing, it's a bit of sort of project design development. It is a lot of different things. It's event planning. It was sort of every day was different, and that, for better or for worse, that work lifestyle has carried on through to the current day. Those types of projects are still a great deal of what I'm involved in. So my life is not 100% sake specific, but over time, it took over much quicker than I had anticipated, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I like how often you use, in general, unexpected or surprises, or, I mean, you seem to enjoy being, what's the word? I mean, carried away from one project to the other, or
yeah. I don't know. Nowadays, kind of all I want to do is just grow rice, make sake, and hang out. That's starting to sound rather ideal as of late. But no, it is all accidental, though, because everything that is central to my life right now, none of it was planned. none of it was in some grand scheme or great ambition or anything. It was the one thing that coming to Japan did for me was I just kind of threw out the rule book on everything and was just motivated solely by things that I found interesting and exciting. And in doing that, I ended up just sort of getting deeper and deeper into, again, not just sake, but the inherent value in rural Japan and the lifestyle and the agriculture and the food, and what I think is potentially the greatest potential for Japan going forward. I think, I mean, it's part of a larger discussion, but I think that the future of Japan is in the countryside.
Do you think there's, well, not really a case to be made? I mean, everyone knows that Japanese food, or believes that Japanese food is healthy, but do you think that the case should be presented differently and better, and in what specifically?
Oh boy. Let's see. Well, I'm going to kind of attack that in a bit of a roundabout way. So as I said, I live out on the Boso Peninsula, which is out in Chiba, just east of Tokyo. Where I live, and given the lifestyle that I have right now, and I don't mean to say this in any sort of way of boasting or in any way of putting down any other, people's, food cultures or their dietary lifestyle or choices. There are all kinds of issues with accessibility and all kinds of things for a lot of different people. And so it's not, a matter of better or worse or anything, but I feel like I can't imagine being in a position where I could have a more fulfilling diet on so many levels. I come to Tokyo now and I walk around and I don't see anything I want to eat. I mean, that's the reality. I feel like I'm being duped most of the time. And that's not to put down the chefs or anybody that's out here.
Yeah, sure.
There's incredible chefs out here doing amazing. Their dedication to their craft and the food they make is absolutely incredible. But unless I'm going to go out and spend $100, $150, $200 on a meal, I'm much better hanging out with my family and my wife at home and cooking something from just what's readily available locally. And it's amazing.
So it's the produce that you really are in love with here.
So it's that, and I think that, and then the other, I guess the extension of that sort of brought me into this world was when I was doing my previous work, working with a lot of producers. I said farmers, not necessarily, sake related, but I was visiting a lot of different producers of fermented products, so soy sauce, mirin, miso, koji makers, things of that nature. And at the same time, I was visiting those places, tasting what it was they were making, and then, spending the night at the homes of farmers and things like that, and getting up with them and helping out in the morning, having breakfast with them. And I realized that these core staples that had been integral into my diet for the previous, 4, 5, 6 years, these taste entirely different. It was almost something entirely different what I was experiencing. And I started looking closer at the core flavorings of these food. It was miso, it was soy sauce, it was these different things. And I think everybody on a broad level understands that these are fermented products. But, 10, 12 years ago, when I realized that these were the clear thing defining all these that were making them different, uniquely different from other fermented food products in other countries and other places, was this thing called koji. And the second I realized that, it was just like a bomb went off. It was just like, everybody knows of these things, but nobody knows that there's one particular quality of these that makes them entirely different from anything else. And so I started exploring that further. And in exploring that, I stumbled upon sake. And I found that integrating not just sake, but those other types of products just into my lifestyle every day, all of a sudden, and one, everything tasted better, and two, I just generally felt better.
That led you to creating Koji Academy.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you were active in Japan,
Yeah.
but a few months ago you were traveling through the US.
Yeah.
What was the reception, the audience like there?
It was excellent. It was a really great experience. As I sort of feel like the best that Japan has to offer, not just to people here in Japan, but globally, lies in the countryside, in most cases. And I would like to help further ways to communicate that and share that, not just with Japanese, but also with the international community. And I feel like I'm in sort of a unique position to do that. So with Koji, that's something that I would like to utilize there as well too. And we've done this a bit on small scale and sort of short trips, but also then create opportunities, not just to bring that overseas, but then to also, for people who are coming to visit, be able to have programs for learning and discovery and education around Koji, fermentation, sake, and those things that are hyper specific to different regions around Japan, that gets them really deep into not just the process, but the lifestyle that goes along with that, and a connection to the agriculture, and a connection to the local food, and then and the people. And I feel like that is where there's going to be a lot of discovery that is going to lead to a lot of excitement in what's out there.
I mean, reflecting on the speed at which craft sake has been developing overseas. I mean, I'm not talking about the sales of Japanese sake in overseas markets, but the development of small human scale breweries, labs. I can definitely agree that there is room for Koji labs to start. A small difference is that Koji is more an ingredient than a finished product, but at the same time it opens the doors for so many applications. New applications.
Absolutely. And I don't think we have any idea as to what the extent of those applications are, and we're only scratching the surface. And so that's what's super exciting.
That's a strong statement.
Oh my goodness, I think it's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be super exciting. So we'll see.
Well, I had one more dimension to Koji and fermentation is temperature. You state that kanzake, warm sake, is the future of sake. Why is that?
So I do indeed. I think that warm sake, I think that kanzake is indeed the future. Because that's something that I feel pretty strongly about. Sake really is it's sort of this artwork of interventions. It's every single bottle or every single tank or every single brew is a masterpiece, but there is a great deal of intervention along the way, which is part of what makes it so exciting and both predictable and unpredictable at the same time. And I feel like that translates to the service of sake as well in lots of really neat and exciting ways, with warm sake being a part of that. And I guess I just feel like on a very simple level, you've got sake in a bottle that's kept in a refrigerator. You can take that and you can pour it into glass A. Mm-hmm. It could be a wine glass or a shot glass or an ochoko or whatever, what have you. That's one dynamic, right? You can change up the glassware, the serviceware. That's another dynamic. For a great deal of service or sake-related service, that's about the extent. They have fantastic, beautiful beverages that are resting, in most cases, hopefully in a refrigerator. There are exceptions. But in most cases in a refrigerator that are taken great care of, that are then, provided to a guest or bought and taken home and enjoyed. But you have this entirely other paradigm where you can then take that bottle and adjust the temperature. And in doing so, creating something that didn't exist before in the previous form. And so you've got, if just having a bottle of sake and a glass in front of you opens up 50% of the potential, I feel like all of a sudden opening up temperature to be able to play with that, it's like being able to maximize the potential of what sake can do. It's maybe not for everyone, and that's fine. And I guess I should emphasize that in preaching my love for kanzake or for warm sake, it's not at the expense of chilled sake, right? The fact that chilled sake and the wild variations in which that can be enjoyed across so many different styles. The fact that that exists is what makes the warm sake really exceptional, right? If all you had was warm sake, the same would be true, right? So it's not so much one at the expense of the other. It's that this is a huge, huge, huge genre of the category that is vastly unexplored and underappreciated and creates incredible flavors and experiences that I don't think can be created with any other beverage. And it tastes damn good. They're just so good. Getting back to that, and getting back to that thing where you were talking about before, having something not just tastes good, but makes you feel good. But that's where I discovered where I didn't just drink something and go, wow, this is really good. It was something where I've had so many experiences where I take a sip of, a sake that has been served to me, warm to some degree. And all I have to do is just sit back and take a deep breath. Because I can't, it feels amazing. And I've never experienced that with any beverage in my life in the same way that I have with that. And again, it's not the right answer, but I'd like to think I'm not the only one. And so if even just a small percentage of the population can experience that, I'd hope that could help broaden the scope of sake service and people's enjoyment of it as well too. I don't want sake to ape another beverage. I want it to be able to stand on its own terms. And I feel like working with warming sake, and then once you start doing that, diversifying, vessels and servingware and things like that to accompany that, that's when it's really going to be something that is defined as something in and of itself. And I recognize the challenges to that. The service challenges are huge. The education that needs to happen is vast. But gosh, without it, I just don't want to live in that world. So.
You did that in Milano, didn't you?
I did a lot. Yeah.
Serving sake at different temperatures.
I did quite a bit. Yeah.
Introducing the culture to
the
audience to the international fair.
Yeah. It's I did. I spent a year in Milan back in 2015. When they had the expo there, working with local restaurants and distributors and things like that, doing sake education as well as events and things of that nature. And it was a fun opportunity because I was kind of given free rein to just bring in a whole lot of really interesting sake. And so I just had this vast selection available and able to just sort of play with that and create all sorts of neat, interesting, different opportunities to interact with that and taste and try that with a lot of local foods and things. And it was a lot of fun. It was. I'd like to think it was well received. I don't know if anybody listening who was there, you can let me know. But
my understanding from, or my judgment, seeing the pictures of some of the trips that you've organized throughout Japan with particular Italian food specialists or students, show that you clearly created something there.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. It's so much fun. It's so much fun for me. That's about the extent of what I can promise is that I'm having a really good time. And if that translates to to somebody else's experience in a similar way, then that's a win, I guess.
And after that, there was your life in Kido-Izumi. Coming back to it, what were the really hard times? What were the really fun times?
One thing that people, I guess, don't talk about a lot when they talk about the experience of brewing, everybody focuses on the physical demands. And I guess I should also preface this with Kido-Izumi has, and this isn't a good, bad, positive, negative judgment or anything. They have not automatized much of their process. So a lot of it is pretty hands-on. It's quite labor intensive. A lot of the tools that are used are not designed for efficiency, but that's true with any brewery to a degree for sure. A lot of people focus on the physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect is probably the hardest part, or becomes most challenging, the part that you don't necessarily expect. Especially in this day and age when you always have so much information coming at you and you're always interacting with so many terminals, with so many things all the time. All of a sudden being in an environment where you don't really even have time to leave the brewery I mean, you're just there. I mean, for us, it was pretty much 5:30 start, about a 5:30 finish. But then in the evening, you go and check on Koji and things like that. And so, I would live in for a couple months and I would commute a couple months as well. And all of a sudden, it's not very often you're basically shut out from the entire rest of the world, period. Like there is no other option. I mean, there's no other way to really integrate a lot of other things into your life. And so all of a sudden, you're with a very small group of people every single day in the same environment, doing literally the exact same thing every single day. I mean, that degree of repetition, I think, is also, a lot of people don't necessarily experience. A lot of people, envision it as this sort of glamorous thing where you're wandering through the Koji Muro and picking up things and smelling them and doing all this. Everything is very, very time regimented, from the second you walk into the brewery at 5:30 a.m. to the second you walk out at 5:30. What has to get done in those 12 hours or whatever, it's laid out, and what's going to happen in what time. And every single day it's a race. And so it's not just a matter of quality, it's efficiency and everything. So you don't have necessarily the leeway to stop and examine and, wander and chat and do all these things. It's a very intense experience. And so you end up getting not just into the brewing process, but you start getting into your own head and these other things. And you just don't have an opportunity to do that very often. And especially in the winter, where you wake up and you start going there and it's dark, you're in a place all day that's dark. You leave in the evening and it's dark. And you do that 7 days a week for 4 months or 5 months or whatever. And that is uniquely challenging. But also in that, there's also a lot of excitement and little instances of joy that come from that as well too. I'm not the best craftsman or artisan or whatever. My brain and my hand do not communicate with one another very well. But even somebody like myself, by engaging with a single thing every single day on that level, you start to notice these small differences in the feel, the smell, all these different things. And I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how to explain it, but there's these little hints of just joy where it almost just feels like you're just going to explode. And they come at the most unexpected times throughout the process during the day. And it's not all the time. It's not every day. But once every few days, all of a sudden you just have this moment where it just feels like everything sparks. And you're not doing anything out of the ordinary or outside of your routine, but it just hits. And I don't know how to explain it. I wish I had a really magnificent way to, communicate what that is, but there's something very...
all your senses are engaged and they're all contributing to that, that emotion.
Yeah, I think so. They're not, they're not being pulled in 100 different directions. And then in doing that,
the whole being is focused on one thing.
It is. And you start to just being able to notice that something that version of you that didn't exist 2 months or 3 months or 6 months prior can do. All of a sudden you get just this tiny bit of insight into something that, you can look at all the temperature control sheets and all the data you want, visit all the breweries you want, that you're just was inaccessible. And so that's really great. And of course, as I say, the birth of sake, when it's being pressed and you're trying it and whatever, that's always, that never gets old, but I found a great deal of joy and enjoyment in it. And I would like to, as I said, I'm not brewing consistently right now. I did a very short stint up at Yamagata Masamune last year, up in Nintendo, which I also think is just an astounding producer. And I would like to further continue that exploration with brewing as well too. But I guess I'm just not being, even if my heart is pulling me that way, I've got a lot of other people and things pulling me in other directions right now. And so I guess I'm just basically being told that that's not where I need to be right now. But we'll see. As I was saying, with Kiruizumi, I wouldn't be able to make that sake in the same form, in the same capacity if I was probably 50 years old or 60 years old. It would just be too, getting back to the physically demanding side, it would just be probably too demanding. Aside from just automation, I would like to think that there's a future for sake brewing where somebody who is 60 years old can still engage with sake brewing in a way that is feasible for them and enjoyable for them, and also viable as a business. And so that's kind of, in a way, kind of an end goal for me as well, too, because I would love to be able to make sake brewing integral to my life. But it's really, really hard given a lot of the logistical and business challenges and things that are out there right now. And so how can I help create an industry where sake can be born from people in different environments, in different situations, creating sake on their own terms? And so I'd like to contribute to that in Japan a little bit. It's going to probably come along a lot, I don't want to say easier, but more rapidly outside of Japan, where it's not bound by the same, rules and legal restrictions and things. But I feel like getting there is going to be something really important for Japan going forward. So yeah, that's sort of one of my, not end game, but my large overarching goals that sort of always in the back of my mind.
You're running Koji Academy from Pots K, which is your personal company, but actually it's a family business, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially a family business of two, my wife and I.
And what about the kids?
Well, they both have business cards. I'd like to think they're integral to the company. Pots K. The K is the character in Japanese for home, or and in that sort of context refers to family. So literally, it's Pot's family, or the house of Pots.
As you watch your daughter grow, what do you see? Do you involve your daughter in your research about Japanese gastronomy and produce?
I guess yes, actually a great deal. And in sake specifically, in many ways. Of course, I do not give my children sake. I do not have them drink it. So when my first daughter was born, we lived in an area called Shimokitazawa, which is a fun area. Lots of great food. Live music, bars, whatnot. It's a fun place, really great. And we had a lot of local places that we would like to go out for food or for drinks, my wife and I. And when my first daughter was born, all of a sudden, places that I had been going to for years and visiting, I had great relationships with the people working there and the chefs and whatnot. All of a sudden, when my daughter was born, we couldn't go there anymore, or they would turn us away, or they'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Can, even if the place there wasn't really anybody there or whatever." And I'm very much sensitive to environments that are for adults that are looking for time to rest and whatever. But all of a sudden, basically all of the places that I enjoyed became off limits, and so I had to choose between an enjoyable and a healthy eating and drinking lifestyle outside of the home and time with my kids. I couldn't integrate those two. And that to me was just sort of personally frustrating. I wasn't necessarily mad at any individual, the place that I went to. It was sort of, I guess, just disappointing. Because I don't know, I guess I felt like the best food education is getting children around different types of food and different types of dining and different types of environments, like it's a given. Japan tends to be relatively segmented, and this is where at this age these school kids spend their time here and do these things, and adults go here and do these things, and people in companies go here and do these things, and it tends to be pretty relatively segmented out, and as a result I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily have any insight into what those different sort of layers of society look like until they get there, and then it's like and then it's sort of too late. And I guess from a just general food and appreciation for food for my kids, I wanted them to just have just being a given that there are a lot of different people that enjoy food, lots of different types of food and beverage in many different ways in different environments. And I wanted to have that access for them, and I realized that just wasn't really all that readily available in Tokyo, and at least not a lot of types of education I wanted. And it's funny, they have in Japan, they've got these restaurants called famides, which are literally family restaurants. They're basically modeled on like Denny's, essentially. Denny's or Coco's, they have both of them here, but it's basically, booths where you go down, order your one plate. It's super cheap. There's nothing, wine is, $2 a glass, whatever. And it's not a matter of good, bad, whatever. But when it comes to family restaurant, I feel like the experience of dining together with people and sharing and doing that is much more of a family experience. And all of that is sort of erased in that environment. Like it's a very, very sterile environment. And for me, the idea of sort of a family restaurant is something very different. And gosh, if you have kids, those are the people that actually need delicious, healthy food and a good drink, probably more, just as much or more than anybody else. And so I started wanting to think about what does that look like with regards to sake. And so I try to, my wife and I, we sort of occasionally go out and do sort of little pop-ups and things like that. My wife has always worked in kitchens and culinary. She was born, her parents ran a bento and udon joint, and so she grew up cooking there from when she was super tiny and has just been working in kitchens her whole life. And so yeah, we sort of do little pop-ups and things like that, as well as sort of education or workshops or different things where families are welcome. And you can also have some really nice sake, and you can have some food that is going to go really well with that sake, but your kid's probably going to eat it too, you know? And so that's sort of our theme, is sort of how do we integrate children into different scenes where there is more diverse food and beverage culture, so that they can have positive associations with those things and generate an interest in those from a younger age. And so, yeah, we're lucky where we live out there. We have just access to so much great food, and a lot of people who care about food and grow food and make food. And so just day to day, we have that quite a bit. And so we feel really lucky. And so we try to come up with ways to share that with communities of other people and families and kids who don't necessarily have that, and arguably could go for, you know, an afternoon of some tasty food and drink and experience that with their kids and not feel like they're being a burden to the environment that they're, you know, stepping into. And I feel like, I guess, to really integrate sake into the culture in a way that it is rooted in a very meaningful and positive way, it has to be rooted somewhere at, I think, the familial level.
Yep.
And right now for children, sake is completely isolated from most of their experience. And so how do we, again, not serve them sake, but create not just an environment where they're around sake, but the other types of engagements and social gatherings and things like that as well too, and get them used to those environments that are positive. And I think that that's the type of thing that's going to be long term. Because I mean, it comes up on the show a lot, is, you know, sake with regards to all the alcoholic beverages consumed in Japan, right? Sake makes up less than 7% of all of that. At that point, it's not a culture anymore. It's a subculture, which is fine. That's actually cool. Actually, in a way, it's more fun. It means you can just kind of like dig in and get crazy. But when you're at that point, you really want to start to examine, I feel like, how it's really deeply rooted in the way that sake had been, you know, up until pre-war or so. I feel like engaging family is going to be important, and that's going to be, I think, a big theme for just Japan in general, is people sort of, the younger generation, their values are sort of changing and where they want to spend their time and their relationship with work and things like that. I feel like that's going to be a really, really sort of important concept. And that's personally important to me. So.
Okay, well, with that comment, I think we're going to close. And I'm looking forward to 1 year of travel and sake.
Yeah.
With you, Justin.
Yeah, we got another year. We got some travels coming up here.
Yeah. See you later then.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, this to be continued. Yeah, there's more coming up. So excellent. Thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you, Justin.
Hey, cheers.
And cheers.
And that will do it for one more episode of Sake on Air. As always, thank you so much for listening and taking time to join us on this sake and shochu fueled journey. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at questions@sakeonair.com, or you can reach us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at sakeonair. We also have a YouTube channel going that has not so much video content at the moment, but if you're keen on listening to us via that platform, that is an option for you as well. As always, Sake on Air is made possible with the general support of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association, and is broadcast from the Japan Sake and Shochu Information Center in Tokyo. This show is a co-production between Export Japan and Potsuke Productions, with all of your audio and sound production done by Mr. Frank Walter. Thanks for listening, and we will be back with more Sake on Air sooner than you know it. Kanpai!